So Rob, we just got done playing some Overpower, a game that is new and yet is really like at least 26, 27 years old. I guess way older than that actually, almost 30 years old. It came out like 95, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm pretty sure it was released by Fleer in 1995.
Yeah. So this was it's a, I guess revamp. What's the word I'd be looking for here?
I think a relaunch.
Relaunch, yeah, relaunch of the old like Marvel versus DC versus Image and occasionally some other stuff game that was out in the 90s by Fleer. And what, Lazarus is the name of the company that took it over?
Yeah, so the game that the company that has restarted the game and acquired the IP after it was essentially abandoned is Lazarus Rising Games. They're a company based out of Boston, Mass.
Yeah. So basically the idea of this game, it has very much like a gin rummy spades kind of feel where you're playing hands against your opponent, and you have like you know, in Magic you would have costs, but in this game the cost is actually your characters can only be a certain number of points. So each of your characters has stats, energy, combat, brute force, and intellect. And it used to be that those numbers added up to, a total, and that total would be the total number that you would count against your deck cost to build the team. But now they have a threat level that isn't necessarily always connected to the stat lines.
Yeah, it allows doing a threat level cost, and that's indicated by the number in the lower left corner of the character card. Gives them the opportunity to take into account specials and maybe inherent abilities that maybe make a character more valuable beyond
Oh yeah.
their stat points.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I think there were some characters that were just like auto includes in the deck because you were like, hey, this guy's an amazing. He has an 8, energy or whatever, but he only costs like 18. So like, you got to include him in your deck. That sort of thing. Or specials are amazing. Or Beast was like a classic example of like, I think he was like a 20 or something like that at the time, but like he had the negates, he had some avoids, stuff like that. So it allowed you to like be like, oh, like I'm just gonna play these characters, and as they continue to put more specials out, some characters just became like really overpowered. And I'm actually kind of excited to see what they do with expansions for this set or for this game as they put more out. Will they like include extra specials for these other characters from the Edgar Rice Burroughs set? That's the other thing that's actually kind of interesting about this game is that the characters, obviously they don't. I'm sure the Marvel IP is way too expensive for anybody to acquire these days. Marvel, DC, Image, they're not using any of those characters. They're using public domain characters. So you've got like Dracula versus Sherlock Holmes versus Cthulhu, Zorro, stuff like that. It's interesting to see like, sort of like a literary version of Marvel superheroes, as it were, or like a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen level of characters. This episode of Eternal Durdles is sponsored by CardMill, the first automated scanner and sorter built specifically for trading card game players. With its intentionally compact design, CardMill uses AI-powered recognition to identify each card and sync inventory with real-time pricing, batching up to 300 cards at a time by name, set, color, or type. Collection data is securely stored in the CardMill network, giving players full access to their cards through an easy-to-use web portal. CardMill supports Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Flesh and Blood, Disney Lorcana, Star Wars Unlimited, and many more to come. Created by software engineer and longtime Magic the Gathering player Jonathan Dumanis, CardMill launches on July 22nd on Kickstarter with early bird pricing starting at $350. Backers receive lifetime access to all software updates and new features. Go to cardmill.com to learn more and reserve your path to the future of card sorting.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of this game kind of started right out as the premise of, like we all had that argument as kids, who would win in a fight? Batman and Superman versus Wolverine and Colossus, like that kind of argument. And you get to do that with this game and take these characters who would kind of never cross paths and really just duke it out and build these kind of cool teams, do these fun things. I mean, they have the core past and history of the game has been in comic books and now literary characters. They have announced that the next set 2 for the relaunch will actually be using the Invincible and
Yeah,
Skybound properties.
that's pretty
So
awesome.
you get Invincible and you get Walking Dead.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, how they, we're just talking about the old version of the game where when they put out a new set, like, they'd sprinkle in a couple of characters from something else, but they didn't really do that if you crossed over from like Marvel to DC. So I wonder if they won't do that for the Edgar Rice Burroughs characters. Then they might have like later on Edgar Rice Burroughs 2 kind of thing where they put out a bunch of new characters and they sprinkle in like a couple of specials for each of the older characters.
Yeah, I mean, there's been talk of possibly doing that kind of thing in the future, but I think they have kind of it mapped out how some of the future sets, and trying to think of what they've said is coming after Skybound. They also have a Top Cow set for
Sweet.
the
Yeah,
Top
because we've
Cow
seen we've
properties.
seen Darkness as some of their branding and stuff too.
Yeah, so they said it's possible they'll come back to the World Legends set and the Edgar Rice Burroughs characters just because there's so much there.
Yeah, I mean, like that is it still feels untapped. Like there's they've got like Robin Hood, Lancelot, King Arthur, Merlin, Morgan Le Fay, like all over the spectrum of literary characters is so vast, especially public domain literary characters, that like you could literally never run out of fodder to like create the game with. And it's funny because I don't know about you. I didn't grow up on Edgar Rice Burroughs, or even in my 20s when I did most of my reading. Honestly, uh, I was a Lovecraft and Howard fan. I'm really surprised that we didn't see a Conan in here.
Yeah, I think there was actually an interview with the CEO of Lazarus Rising Games, and he talked about that. And there was one character, and I forget. I think I was actually Leonidas.
Okay.
Now I think about it, Leonidas was originally supposed to be Conan, and they couldn't figure out who owned the rights to the Conan the
Yeah.
Barbarian IP. So they kind of shifted gears to Leonidas and changed it to kind of fit the card and the character they have now. But yeah, Conan the Barbarian was
Okay.
definitely one of the characters they wanted to use, and just couldn't figure out who to talk to.
Yeah, all those old pulp, they've got the old pulp heroes, John Carter, Carson of Venus. Those are super cool too, because like again, this is stuff that I only sort of like grasped in my 20s when I was really getting into like literary fiction and reading like kind of for fun, you know, as opposed to like I think somebody handed me Tarzan when I was like in my teens. I would have been like, please, like get out of here. I'm reading Dris Do'Urden, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think a couple of things really stick out to me about this relaunch set. I mean, the first is they've done a very good job about balancing it.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Nothing feels like it doesn't feel like there's any best thing to do. Everyone almost feels usable,
Yeah, every
even if
character
it's in
feels
some
viable. Yeah.
niche way, or they have some kind of twist on them. And the characters really feel like themselves. The Sherlock specials feel like something Sherlock would do, or the Zorro specials specifically. So I think they did a fantastic job at, really making these characters kind of distinct and unique,
That was one of the
in their
one of
own
the
right.
big issues with the old game too, is that there were some cards that were just blatantly bad. It'd be like, look at one card in your opponent's hand, or look at the top two cards of your opponent's deck, and you're like, I just wasted a card to like look at two cards, that sort of thing, or like look at a card in your opponent's hand, that kind of thing. We're like, this game is so very tied to like card advantage and card economy that I think that they did a very good job in this of still including those style of cards, but giving you ways. We were just playing, but there one of the battle sites is like if you look at your opponent's hand, you can make them discard a card, or maybe you can draw a card. So Baker Street does that, right?
Right. So I used two cards that from the home base in each of those games. The first one, 221B Baker Street. If you would reveal, play a card that allows you to reveal search opponent's hand deck, you get to discard a card along with that. So it makes a lot of these previously unused cards, like you were talking about, where you just, one of the old cards is opponent reveals two cards at random from hand. Well, that doesn't do anything. I mean, you're trading for information, but you're down a card, like you said, and they've taken that kind of knowledge that they have after so many years have passed. Like, okay, how can we make these cards previously unplayable more usable. And you see that with 221B Baker Street and those style of cards. And you also saw it in the second game we played with the home base I used, Spartan Training Ground. For the same reason, training cards were
garbage.
pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they required you to basically spend 2 cards for 1 card, and that home base allows you to have the training cards sitting there as an extension of your hand by being placed, and you're not losing that card advantage for it. So it makes those cards playable, and they've done a great job with that, making previously unplayable cards playable in strategies, and making them decks you can build around and really do something new with the old card pool, and also as they go forward.
They did a good job of tacking draw a card onto some cards that were otherwise useless as well, which, hey, who doesn't love to draw cards? I was actually reading through one of my all-time favorite comic characters is Longshot. So I was reading through all of Longshot's specials today, and he has a card that is combined 2 power cards, 1 through 4, for a single attack that can be blocked together or individually. And I was just like, why would you do this? This is actually bad. Like, you're not only losing a card, but your opponent has the option of defending it in the best way possible for them at any point in time. It's just like, why does this exist?
Yeah, that, for people that are newer to the game, it comes back to card advantage.
Yeah, and also timing. This game has the betting mechanic, so like that could, you could be in a situation where you're like, oh, my opponent's going to concede in a minute. Like, let me spend 3 cards to do 2 cards worth of damage to somebody, knowing that like maybe they don't have anything left in their hand or something. There are reasons to do that, but they're vastly suboptimal compared to a lot of other things you could be doing in the game.
Right, and I think this game is very different than Magic. Not a lot of I've found it doesn't transfer. Like, a lot of games now take substantial elements from Magic, where this just takes almost nothing.
Yeah, this game was when I first started playing, this was one of those games where like the only thing that translated from Magic was deck building and the concept of like card economy and card advantage, but like everything else, there's no costs, so you don't have that metric to build decks that way. I mean, there are costs in that, like you have to have a certain level of something to be able to play a card a lot of times, or you have to have that character still alive in your deck. But it really comes down to thinking more in a strategy way than in a like linear Magic kind of way. No one's worried about what you're doing on turn 2. Are you doing the right thing on turn 2? And also because you're playing it sort of like, I keep bringing it back to like gin rummy or like those style of like your hand card games, spades. When you play a card, your opponent gets to decide to defend it, right? So as you go back and forth in an 8-card hand, you might be able to line up your attacks in a way that your opponent just spent his like card on one of your lower cards, and now you have a higher card that he could have blocked otherwise. Like the timing of this game is interesting in that, because of the way you play the cards can completely change the way that the outcome of the turn goes for you. Since you're enjoying the show, please like and subscribe the video. It helps the channel grow.
Support Eternal Dodos on Patreon so we can create even more content and cover events.
Patreon supporters get an ad-free RSS feed. You can even join our deck donation tier to get your very own episode.
Join the Durdle Maniacs at patreon.com/eternaldurdles. Now back to the show.
Yeah, and you can see this in one of the final turns we had in our second game. You took a level 4 attack, and I used a level 2 power card and a training card to boost that 2, to essentially trade up my 2 to your 4 and save the 4 that I had in hand. And you kind of do the math from your venture in terms of how much damage you think you can do. And that essentially allows me to save that 4 that I could have used, and now you don't have a 4.
Yeah, and then you can just get through for free. Yeah.
You have to make an unfavorable exchange or take that hit, because you have to, either now use a 5 or a 6 or some kind of more premium card to defend that 4 that I have left. So it's really cool in that regard that it's kind of wholly different than anything else out there.
And they have a couple ways to play as well, which is great. So if you were an old school Overpower player, there's something that they call Legacy, which is basically you can use all the old cards and all the new cards combined. right? Is there a like only old cards version? I'm sure there is. Was that Golden or something like that? Golden Age?
So you have different formats, like you have Magic. I mean, right now what's considered the modern format is just the ERB
Just the new
World
stuff,
Legends
yeah.
set, because there's not enough sets for a rotating standard at the time. Then there's Golden Age, which is the old cards from the previous game that have been released by Fleer, the new ERB set. And then you have Legacy, which is the old Marvel Fleer cards, the new ERB set, and then 2 fan-made sets.
I see.
That have been adopted by a group called the North American Overpower League.
I see. Yeah, I was going to say, what is the NOLA or NAOL? Yeah. I was about to ask
North American
about
Overpower
that. That
League.
makes sense. Well, that's the thing that's like kind of appealing about this is like I had, when I was looking at this game and they were releasing it, I was like, wow, I have a lot of my old cards. I wonder, like, one, if they're worth anything. Two, if I can play them. And the answer is, yeah, you can continue playing with your old cards. And I think a lot of people that get into the game still are like, the old cards, I can play with those. I can start collecting. I mean, there's the itch to scratch of just collecting new cards. Like, who doesn't love that? That was my opening a box the other day was amazing. They did a really great job as well with distribution in the boxes. Like, I got almost every card when I opened up a box. I think I was missing like 2 character cards and a couple of specials from a couple of characters, but otherwise I opened up and got almost everything I needed from the entire set.
So from their kind of model with the ERB World Legends set was to make every card that's playable at the common and uncommon slot. So the characters, their specials, cards like Teamworks, Any Powers, all of that, everything for the game at the outset is at the common or uncommon slot. The rare and ultra rare slots are reserved for alternate art.
Yeah, which is sick. And that they did an amazing job with the art. Like, between the the alternate art for like I have 3 of art for like 1 or 2 guys, but I really dig the like old pulp art that they use for like Carson of Venus and John Carter. Those are really they have like a Vallejo kind of look to them, which is super cool.
Yeah, I believe that was the old Joe Jusko original art that they licensed for it, and it just
pops. It's so cool looking on
such
cards.
A distinct style and very different from what you see in other games today.
Yeah, I mean they're paintings, right? Like, we're not looking at digital art for at least for those. I'm sure there's some amount of digital art in the game, but the art that is like the alternate art stuff is just so beautiful. It looks great in foil too.
Yeah, I mean so they went with the cold foil style. I mean, Cardamundi.
Yeah.
If you're
the OG Magic printer, yeah.
Yep, Cardamundi has printed Magic for years. They also print Lorcana. So the foils that you see coming out of the set are actually the cold foils similar to Lorcana.
Okay.
So they kind of have that finish and that type of shine as opposed to the Magic foils. So it looks really great. I mean, the foil cards really pop. Kind of in the way they've done it.
Yeah, one of the other things that I like is how they've kind of just given you a way to build decks where the first thing people are trying to do when they look at this, especially older Overpower players, is like, let me just jam all the 8s into a deck. That's not possible. It might be possible when they put out new cards, but right now you can't like throw like 3 8s into a deck and throw a 7 in the back or something like that. Like, you really have to balance out your team in a way that like doesn't always give you an optimum power pack. And they changed one of the rules with the multi powers as well, which I think actually is an improvement on the old rules.
Yeah, so another thing they did with the multi powers is they got rid of the level 1 and 2 multi powers, and that kind of makes the 3, 4, and 5 value multi powers that you have in your deck just kind of that much more valuable.
Yeah, and so then the 3s really and the 4s are 1 per decks now.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's it just really makes it more valuable and more strategic.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about, should I use this defensively or should I save it offensively to further the spectrum KO on a character?
And they don't have
It
the
really adds
bonding
to
rule
more
either now,
complexity.
right? Like where if you had
Yeah,
two
the
multi
fusion rule,
powers, the
so
fusion rule, it doesn't bond, it doesn't do that anymore. They just all count individually, which is good. That's I mean, if you're an offensive player, that's good.
yeah, and given how few of them there are now,
Yeah, it's
it
less of an
makes
issue.
sense
Yeah.
to do it that way.
I also like the way that they've changed sort of the way that they've listed some of the stuff on the cards, like this one, for example, where they show you it can be used defensively or offensively. It's written like it's given you symbols on the cards that show you like the way you can play these cards, which was not always the case back in the day. I don't know if you've ever called the Overpower hotline in the 90s, but I did. And then like 3 hours later, they'd call you back and be like, actually, here's the ruling on that card. That was
Ironically, there's still kind of an Overpower hotline. It just is
the Discord,
in Discord now. Yeah,
and they get back to you
but,
much
like,
faster.
they did a great job in kind of finding spots in the rules that were very
Ambiguous.
unfriendly to players. Yeah, and like, how do I use this card? When is this card used? So you have the paper clip to show that it something attaches to a character. You have the sword to be an offensive action. You have the shield as a defensive action, and then you have an A for the astral plane. It's just kind of a special that sits out there and is kind of a global effect, but is not attached to a creature or a character. So, if a character is KO'd, that special sitting there with the astral plane, like Call of Cthulhu, would remain in effect.
Yeah. Trying to think of some of the other cool parts of this game aside from, there's a lot of it is just like quality of life upgrades to the cards. I will say I do miss the old finish on the Overpower cards. Just if you're an old school Overpower player, you played back in the day with no sleeves, different finish on these, which is not the end of the world. Probably ultimately a better product. But I remember that was the one game where like when they came out with sleeves, people were like, I'm not playing with sleeves. And then you'd have like your blue DC backs and your Marvel backs that had like Wolverine and Spider-Man. You just mix them all into the same deck and people were like, well, whatever. No one's really like giving too much of a care about like you obviously having different backed cards in your deck, but they were very sturdy.
Yeah, they were the old waffle poker style.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
card
exactly.
stock.
They definitely felt like poker cards. Yeah.
So that it really gave it a real distinct feel compared to the kind of glossy cards that Magic was using at the time, and kind of has become standard. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like the waffle cards that's not the card stock being used in the future. But that was just like one of those distinct feels that was unique to the game that I loved as a kid growing up. And there's just something about these character cards that when you see them, like, they're just so cool. Like you just want to collect them. Like you just want like a Wolverine or Sherlock Holmes or whoever your favorite characters are, and they just like seeing the stats. Like it's great. Like there's just something so appealing about it.
So let me talk about a couple of resources for people getting into the game or getting back into the game. So you've got Orange King is a great place to look for like singles and stuff like that. There's another place. Category 1? Is it Category 1 games?
Yeah, there's a couple. So I'll just shout them out. Orange King is in Pennsylvania.
Larry's been great. I've dealt with him a few times now. Amazing
inventory. Run by Larry Van Atten. You have Category 1 games out of Utah. You have Heroes and Games out of my hometown, Columbus, Ohio. And there are a couple other that have...
Gamers Guild is where I bought my box from.
Yep.
Gamers Guild in Arizona, yeah.
There's Pandemonium Games in the Boston area. And those are the ones off the top of my head. So the distributors have product and more shops can now order it, so you're going to see more. And once the Invincible set 2 with the Skybound and Invincible characters launch,
I think you're going to see a giant increase in people wanting to play too for that stuff.
Yeah, that set is scheduled for sometime between late December 2025 and early January 2026. So no official release date has been given yet, so it's coming. They've set up organized play, and you can find some of this at their website, Overpower Card Game, and also in the Discord. There's actually 2 DK regional events coming up that are scheduled. Yeah, there's going to be 4 regional events for the year, and then the first nationals in early 2026, either January or February.
Man, they're hitting the ground running with organized play, huh?
Yeah, they're
It's
really
always nice to
giving it
see.
a go. And, these 4 regionals will be 20K prizes, with the nationals being 25. The first regional is happening July 19th at Zulu's Board Game Cafe in Linwood, Washington. Regional number 2 is Saturday, August 30th at Heroes and Games in the Greater Columbus Convention Center in Columbus, Ohio. Regional 3 and 4 have not been announced. Regional 3, they are looking at potentially Canada.
Okay.
Because there's a
That's
large
fair.
Canadian player base, and
that's where Wolverine's
regional
from. It
fours.
makes sense.
Yeah. There's actually a large group. The NAOL just had a Peace Bridge Memorial event, and that was held in Canada. And one of kind of the fun things they do is, see how many top 8 players are from Canada or the United States, and who will take down the crown, Team USA or Team Canada. Team Canada won this past year, but
they have the home field advantage. I get it.
Right. And I've been to one of these NAOL events. There was one here close to me in Texas, and it's great. I mean, if you're coming from Magic and you like things like pre-modern, old school, legacy, where you're just hanging out with great people that are just having fun and want to play seriously but play to have fun. I mean, this is the kind of group and community for you. And the Overpower community has been great, and so has the North American Overpower League community as well.
Yeah. The other resource I wanted to mention was their website, where you can look at all the cards, build your deck. Like if you decide to get an account on that, you can actually build a deck on there. It's not perfect. The deck building software on there isn't perfect, but you can see all the cards and search for the cards that you want to look at and stuff. So if you want to get an idea of what all the characters' stats are, or what all the specials are for the characters, it's a great place to start.
Yeah, there's a card search feature on Cardio. They partnered with Cardio to do that. CARDE.io and is Cardio's website, and you can find the Overpower portion of that as well. And it's a great place just to look through the cards, see the art, get a feel for the characters, what they do, the game. And more resources are out there. I mean, on the Lazarus Rising's put up some how to play videos, some professional quality. There are also commentated matches that they do, where they kind of talk about the plays. I mean, they're legacy format, but you get a sense of how the game functions and flows and how the mechanics work. And then for these regionals upcoming, they're going to be recording these and doing commentary and releasing that too. So that's coming as well for people that want to focus on the new cards, because they may be more accessible, easier to find. And with kind of these legacy cards that are from 1993 to 1998 was when the game was running. Scarcity has really become an issue for the old legacy cards. So some people want to focus on the newer cards and the modern. That content is coming. There are also some great resources in learning it. Heroes and Games, they do a podcast called Overpower Adventures. It's a great kind of water cooler type podcast. Then there's also a player in Canada, Marcel, who does the Overpower Mountain podcast, and that's more of your competitive strategy content for players that are looking for that. So those are 2 great resources. I've put out a couple articles that I just kind of write. You can find those in the Discord or the Overpower Facebook group or the NAOL Facebook group as well.
Maybe we'll put up a Overpower section at eternaldurdles.com so you can have somewhere to call those home.
I think that would be a great resource for it, because right now I'm just throwing them up on my Google Drive and linking them in Facebook and Discord groups.
Yeah,
having a place,
having a landing zone for that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Eternal Durdles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield. Moxfield is the best Magic the Gathering deck building website on the internet. You can create, share, and find decks from Commander to Legacy and even fan-supported formats like Pre-Modern and Old School. You can see all of our decks on our Moxfield. Follow the links below to stay tuned.
We're entering this like renaissance of collectible card games like we had in the 90s, where like all these IPs are popping up with card games. You got Lorcana, you've got Overpower, Star Wars Unlimited, Sorcery. I don't know if you're familiar with Sorcery. That's big in Ohio for some reason. But like all these games are popping up, and I've got my hand in four card games right now: Sorcery, Overpower, Magic, and occasionally I play the old L5R game that I couldn't help myself during the pandemic, and I went deep on buying cards from my childhood. But yeah, it seems like it would be smart for us to like have sort of a home for written content for that sort of stuff. So I'll talk to Phil, and maybe we'll get some of your content up there so that at least has a place that it can be pointed to land people to talk about this stuff. I love writing about old card games because it's just like you get your head into a completely different deck building space, and it's like a brand new puzzle to solve. That was like the first thing I realized when I started opening the packs, is I was like, oh, this is great. This is like a whole new puzzle for me to solve. I can just like, what's the word? Micro focus on making decks for a game that I haven't played in like 25 years. That was like, I was like, this is great. Like, man, like this, just piecing everything together again and like using that part of your brain that you haven't used. Like when I got back into Magic, that was the exact like itch to scratch, was just like, oh yeah, I remember making decks. This is great. Like I remember, oh yeah, this card's like that card, that sort of stuff. So for anyone who has never played a card game other than Magic, I don't know how you're still sitting here listening to us talk about this for this long, but good on you. But that's one of the cool things about these other card games, is like being able to like kind of discover the deck building itch that you get from those again. To me, is just like one of the coolest things about these games, specifically Overpower, because the deck building is so vastly different from Magic the Gathering.
I think that's what makes it such a great game. Is it kind of came alongside Magic, and from my understanding, Overpower was profitable back in the day, but Marvel at the time overall was
not
going
profitable,
through some financial issues and just started selling off parts of the business and their rights. Apparently, the story is Overpower was accidentally included in a deal. They couldn't make their own game anymore. Like, well, we're making money, but whatever, we sold it. So it just kind of went dormant. And then the Lazarus Rising group, was able to acquire it after the IP had essentially been abandoned. So it's, and that's what makes it fun. It's just so different. It didn't rip off any elements. It doesn't feel like Magic. It feels fresh. It feels new. There's nostalgia in the characters that kind of brings you to it. And it's, kind of once you get it, it's pretty simple, but you also realize how much depth there is to the card game and how many different strategies you can do. And that's a real fun exploration in deck building and strategy theory crafting.
Yeah, that was one of the things I really noticed about this game when I got into it initially, is like how vastly not like Magic it is. But it does it in a way that like some card games in the 90s were like, we're not like Magic at all, and they would do something and you're like, you're just doing that to be contrarian about like the card game that you're obviously like doing this because of its success. Whereas like Overpower came up with a pretty balanced system right off the bat, and then like I think they solved some problems that the game had in testing. Like, have you ever played Overpower without the wagering, Rob?
Yeah. So that format skirmish, that's what we did as kids.
Yeah.
Like we're not venturing like, I don't know, what are these mission things? No, we're trying to beat your characters up, and you only lose when your last one is knocked out.
And I think
like,
that was
what we did.
The venturing thing solved a lot of problems in game design, because they were like, oh, like, Johnny drew like 3 of the same cards and had to discard them, and now he's got a hand of 4, and Tim just is pummeling the crap out of him, and he has no reprieve. He just has to sit there and have this like, Magic calls that like the land destruction problem, right? You have this bad, a feel bad moment that makes you not want to play the game anymore, right? Well, if you could just concede when your opponent starts pummeling down on you, and then move to the next hand and maybe, you know, get there. And then it created like an entire other like side hustle game that you could play that made the game that much deeper. To me, that was just like a kind of genius move.
Yeah, having the access of, you know, multiple win cons between defeating all of your opponent's characters or completing your mission set just feels very comic book-esque, right? Like, you know, our team has a mission, and you know, the mission is most important in terms of priority in the rules of the game, unless modified by something. Missions supersede knocking out all the characters.
So if your opponent knocked out all your characters, but you won,
but you had more venture and more say venture for the win, you would actually win the match.
Yeah, it's been a while since I don't think that's ever happened to me. I did have one loss where my opponent got all their ventures, knocked out all my guys, and I lost all of my ventures in the same like turn. So I have had the triple loss before, but I've never been in a situation where like I would have lost, but I had gotten the last shot off. That's pretty cool trick.
And that the venturing mechanic and kind of assessing, you know, the value of your hand and what's played, what you have placed and what your opponent has placed is just something, you know, a wild kind of skill.
It's a whole other skill,
and, you know, kind of do that assessment and what do you think you can get through that your opponents may not be able to stop. Like it just is unlike anything else in card games. And I think that was kind of what makes it great. They didn't come up with these things to be contrarian. They came up because it felt within the genre and it felt cool and it felt fresh, as you know, we're going to be our own thing as opposed to the anti thing.
Yeah. Well, Rob, it's been awesome having you on to talk about Overpower, man. A total trip down memory lane getting to play it. We've definitely got to play some more games because I got trounced and now I've got to go back and like figure out, you know, my deck builds and stuff. But it was so much fun, like getting a chance to sit down and like play a couple of games. And I'm psyched. I'm pumped to play more Overpower.
Yeah, me too. Looking forward to the next time, and I hope you get out to one of the regionals and qualify for nationals. So if top 8 players from each regional feed into the nationals, the 25K nationals in, you know, early 2026, I'm qualified. I think it would be awesome to have you there.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
So. All right, I guess that's a challenge. I'll take it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyhow, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll catch you on the flip.
Take care, everyone.
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button.
You can also support us on patreon.com/eternaldurdles, which now offers the new Deck Donation tier.
During July, the Deck Donation patrons will get a 2-for-1 special where both Phil and I will run your deck through a league.
I'll play literally whatever you want.
So brew your spiciest or stock us up with a stock list.
I'll literally play whatever you want.
Thanks for watching.